guys, welcome to this another episode on Talk with Tyson. And today, once again, we have a very esteemed guest before us, Mr. Dale Menezes. And also joining with us once again is Matthew Almeida himself. Well, he has made a debut first in the uh, Goa myths of the Goa Inquisition. So he's very keen and he's very interested in this topic because he has done quite some research himself. And without further ado, Matthew, could you please do the honors of introducing today's guest speaker?
Of course, Tyson, in my research paper also I had written that experts and historians need to come forward and do scholarly research on the Inquisition. And when I got to know about Al-Zulaiji, the web series on the Goa Inquisition, I was very happy because Mr. Dale Luis Menezes has brought in a lot of experts in the web series who are talking on the various topics, which we will he himself will be talking about it. And I would like to introduce him. Dale Luis Menezes is a PhD student in the history program at Georgetown University. His research interests include the history of commodities and imperial and non-imperial polities in early modern South Asia. Now, he's also interested in the South Asian kings, merchants, and laborers in the making of a global world, what he likes to call it globalizing world. So from the 1500s onwards. So his research also includes the European and non-European spheres of South Asia's globalizing history. Okay, and he tries to view these seemingly different components as forming a part of a same political economy. Okay, so he likes to read a lot and he likes to research a lot, and that is why he could come out with a great topic like that. So apart from his academic pursuits, Mr. Menezes also writes frequently for India-based news magazines. And when time permits or when friends ask him or urge him, he also comments on Konkani and Portuguese literature written from Goa and Bombay. Of course, Mr. Dale is a native of Goa. He's also a member of the European Research Council, founded India's Politics in its Vernacular. And he likes to review these projects in three languages, that is Konkani, Marathi, and Portuguese. Speaking of that, do you know he literally knows 8 languages? So
Wow.
he reads Afrikaans and Dutch, Gujarati, Marathi, Portuguese, and speaks English, Hindi, and Konkani, speaks and writes. So he's talking about his education. He did his bachelor degree from Maharaja Sayaji Rao University in Baroda, Gujarat. And he did his master's degree from Jawaharlal Nehru University, the famous JNU, which produces a lot of anti-nationals, like Kanhaiya Kumar. And currently he's doing his, pursuing his doctorate, okay, in the Georgetown University. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Tyson. It's great to be here, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of this show. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Yeah, and before we start, so Dale's
firing and bombarding the questions.
Yeah, ¿Cómo estás?
¿Cómo está? Yes.
Yeah.
It's evening, right? Boa tarde.
Yeah, boa tarde. Okay, so let's move on to the questions that we have prepared. And this was these are some questions even that some of my friends and some of my companions and all, they would frequently ask even when Matthew had presented his paper also and the first episode. So the first question, before we jump into those, for the audience also to get to know you a little better, why did you take an interest in this topic, in the topic of Inquisition?
Right. So look, I'm a historian, so naturally I'm interested in a very wide range of subjects that can qualify as history, right? So we generally tend to read very widely. We have many interests, and of course, Inquisition is one of them, right? But this this topic is, especially for us in Goa, is a special one and a dangerous one, right? And it
Yeah.
is dangerous
Dangerous.
because there is more misinformation then there is reliable
Very
scholarship,
correct.
right? Especially in the public domain, right? So it seemed to us, especially in the those who were studying history, those who were doing research, that there was this tussle between misinformation and political propaganda on the one hand, and what was written by historians. You know what they wrote after doing years and years of rigorous research, right? So that to me was very clear right from the beginning that there was these two different two different ways of how the Inquisition has been talked about, especially the Goan Inquisition has been talked about. Uh, and so naturally, I started reading up about it, right? Whenever I could, whenever there was some material available, because a lot of this material is not available in English, right? Because this research has, until today, been conducted or written in Portuguese. So you have papers and some books that are largely written in Portuguese. So it was also a matter of learning the language first to access good quality stuff on the Inquisition. And this was largely because, again, as I said, there was too much misinformation and political propaganda on the topic, right? So some of us in the some of us as historians, young as well as senior scholars, were always worried about worried about this, and we thought like we need to do something about it. Uh, so that the public, especially the Goan public, are aware of the facts, right? And I use the word very carefully over here. They need to be aware of the facts. But to answer your question in a much more personal level, as I said, I'm a historian, and no matter what my field is or subfield is, I have to read up about other things as well. So I study mostly politics and economy or trade and commerce and such like things. I'm not necessarily a scholar of religion, right? But still, I have to read up about religion, right? It is a vast field. It's a very lively field, and every year there are many books are published, so you need to keep up on it. I also have to read up about caste. I have to read up about slavery all over the world, race and racism. That's something that it also needs to be read. You know, you need to keep up with it while you're doing your research, and also you need to read up about trade and commerce and commodities and things like that, because these are also things that come up. So I'm not just interested in the Inquisition, right? In the history of the Inquisition, my interests are much more are wider, are much more diverse, and I think that helps me. And knowing about the Inquisition obviously helps me also in my research, because obviously there are connections, and we could talk about that a little later.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So as you said, your interests are something else, but you did take interest in this because it is one topic which is being used not only in Goa but all over India by these fanatic and extremist groups, especially the Hindutva groups. One person I could name is Shefali Vaidya, who is spreading the news, misinformation, as you said, Mr. Dale,
Mm.
about the Inquisition and making people hate the church or Christians, okay, and blame the Christians in Goa that they had done atrocities against Hindus. And when I type the word Goa Inquisition on YouTube, I find more than 100 channels, YouTube channels, who
Mm.
are having more than 200 or 700 viewers who watch all this misinformation and have hatred in their heart. So, they think that they are historians. they think they are historians. I would like you, as a
Mhm.
historian yourself, pursuing a PhD, what does it take to conduct a historical research? What does it take, like, to be called a historian and not a namesake historian or self-proclaimed historian?
Right. Yeah, so I think it takes a lot of hard work to be a historian, and that I think it's true for other fields and other disciplines as well. But I think there is something unique, and there is some it's a kind of specialization that requires different kinds of skills, right? And it takes years and years,
Yes.
it takes years to even just get a hold of the basics, right? So what I think is really essential right from the get-go is reading, is long hours of reading, because it's not enough to read 2 books or 10 books, right? That's not the
Correct.
case, right?
Correct.
Because that to have a grasp of any topic on even on a master's level, right, uh, takes at least about 25 to 30 books, like in a course year, like in a semester, right? That's just your regular coursework, right, for
Mhm.
one course.
Correct.
But then you need to read more, because your research interest would take you elsewhere, right, which is not
Correct.
necessarily
Very
part
correct.
of the syllabus and things like that. So it does. So in good schools, in good colleges or universities, reputed colleges or universities, a student is really made to learn, read a lot, put through a lot of hard work. So reading is essential over here, and not just, as I said, 1 or 2 books, but it's a lot. The amount of reading you have to do is really punishing in many ways, right? This is something that every MA graduate has to go through. But as far as research is concerned, I think what one really needs is a proficiency in languages, right? So it's not enough to know 1 or 2 languages, and the further back you go in time,
Correct.
you need like more and more and more. So part of the reason why I ended up learning these languages as I went along was precisely because the material is available in in many different languages. Um, so you have a rich source of Dutch material, for instance,
Mhm.
for early
Yes.
modern
Yes.
India, right?
Yes.
Really good material. You have some Italian material. Definitely there is Portuguese material, but you also have material in like Indian languages as well. So you need to be able to read that, right? Read those sources. You need to be able to read the old handwriting, because the scripts are not the same, right?
Correct.
Uh, and uh, and I think what is really the hardest thing uh, as a historian, or being trained as a historian, to be able to understand that there is change over time, right? So
Very
things are
true.
not static, and to grasp that and to be able to say something meaningful about a particular period of time, whether it's 10 years or 100 years or more, whatever, is takes a lot of time and effort and careful thinking about what can you say in relation to the evidence you have, or where do you go and find that evidence, or even if you have like fragmentary evidence, how do you solve that issue of explaining what has changed over a period of time, right? And
Correct.
this is essentially the human experience, living in a society, living in a polity. And basically, I think historians do have a lot of constraints regarding what we can say uh, in relation to the sources that we have, right? And so I think that essentially is, I think I would say, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it obviously, but these are the 3 things I would think of as what really goes into doing historical research.
Yes. Coming to that, on the same point, Mr. Day, um, you know, when I was doing my research paper, I realized that just recorded history is not enough. I need to understand the culture, the mindset, the context,
Hmm.
sociological context, and I studied anthropology when I was doing my philosophy. So, do you feel that anthropology and history go hand in hand? Because many people try to separate them and just give us a recorded facts, but they don't try to look at the anthropological side of history.
No, you're absolutely right that it's not enough to just maybe what you call as recorded history. That is not enough. So you need to like understand the context, and that context is as much a cultural context as it is political, as it is a mental context, right? So
Religious as well. Yes,
precisely, right? So you can keep on adding to it, right?
correct,
It keeps on. There is a lot that you need to do as far
correct,
as context is concerned, and context is something that is not necessarily the easiest thing to grasp,
correct.
right?
Yes,
Because how do you know what that context is or was, uh,
correct,
and in that case. A historian tends to use various approaches or various methods. Anthropology is one of them, right? And since I'll just perhaps just stick to anthropology because, and to be very brief about it, there was a time when I think historians were saying that we need to engage much more with anthropology precisely because we wanted to know more of that context, right?
correct.
There are things that historical sources cannot tell you so easily,
Correct,
Yes,
correct.
right? And so
yes,
that's why you need to find other ways, other theoretical ways to get at the questions or get answers for which there might not be sources, right? And this was something I think in the 80s or something, and then a decade or so later, many anthropologists started saying that we need to be more historical in our approaches because what was happening was I think they were finding it really difficult to make any claims on anything because they were not necessarily looking at evidence much more closely,
correct. Yes,
right? And
yes,
so I think we've come to a point where where historians as anthropologists look for look at other disciplines or sub-disciplines to answer some questions that their own disciplines cannot answer so easily, or that not
yes,
necessarily trained in that way to answer. So I think the buzzword now is interdisciplinarity, right? Where not just social sciences and humanities, but also like the hard sciences, as it were, can come together to to do work on a certain topic, right? So we've realized that life as it is lived today or in the past is much more complex than what we understand, right? Or what we assume it to be. And so if you look at it much more closely, if you look at the finer details, you need help from other fields. You need help from your other colleagues who are doing work in, say, other fields of history or other disciplines in the social sciences or the humanities. So a lot of work gets done in collaboration, or scholars are really trying hard to collaborate with other scholars because the reality as we live it, as I said, or as was lived by somebody else, is a lot more complex to grasp today.
Yeah, and
how much
it
was it to grasp, Tyson?
yeah, it did make sense even because even in theology when we also learned, when we were in the seminary, there was a lot of like when you do certain contextual understanding of even like Jesus or certain characters that we have. So you cannot just open the Bible and say, okay, this is it. Like you need to go to certain psychological aspects. You need to go, of course, take even secular history to understand the biblical history. And yeah,
It's
so it
something similar to that. This is exactly what I've been talking about, and I'm aware of this current in theological studies where I think they wanted to really go at this, understand the sociological context, not just in the not just from the Bible, but also from whatever else that they did there. So fieldwork became very important when it came
Very
to
true.
doing theology, right? So I don't know if that is still there, but there was suddenly a current where you had to go to the field, you had to talk to people, right, and get a sense of what is happening on the ground, and then come back and revise or recalibrate your own understanding of the reality, isn't it?
Correct. Absolutely true. And I was going across through your channel, like which is called Al-Zulaiji, if I'm not mistaken, Al-Zulaiji.
Yeah.
And I would just want to ask you, what's the purpose of the Al-Zulaiji, website or the channel, like?
Yeah, so the Al-Zulaiji Collective is a group of different individuals, so not necessarily scholars, but also activists, or whoever is interested in Goa and wants to do critical work on Goa, like be very careful when you think about Goan history and culture. So with that intention, we came together. I don't remember exactly, but some years back, about I think about 8 or 9 years ago, this group was formed, and um, our understanding of not just Goan history, but a wider history of South Asia, or what is called the Indian Ocean world, right from say the medieval times, has been that it is a it is a product of different streams of different peoples, different cultural traditions coming together. So in that sense, Goa as we know it today is a product of centuries of cultural interaction, isn't it?
Okay.
uh, and this is something that we thought we needed to highlight more through our work, right? To take it to the Goan public, so that this understanding of, say, to the history of Islam, or Islamicate, as sometimes it's called, polities, or Persianate polities, because the Adil Shah, the Bijapuri Sultanate were essentially the courtly language was Persian, and they ruled at least the city of Goa for some time. So, and then you have Portuguese, and then you have, say, the Indic cultural influences, and then you have influences from, say, the Deccan, from down south, from some from Karnataka and Kerala. So you have these various influences, and also you have influences from Africa. No, so there's this lines that you can draw from Goa to all over the world, isn't it?
Mm.
However, sometimes there is a tendency that only, say, the Indic past is highlighted. Like there's the tendency to say that, oh no, Goa is only Indian, right?
Correct, very true.
Where we kind of tend to forget that there are other streams, and even from India. Like, so the problem is that when you say Goa is Indian, like, we tend to forget that there are streams from India itself. Like, there are various kinds of maybe not elite cultures, right? Tribal cultures or subaltern cultures that have been interacting with Goa, making Goa over the centuries. So the aim basically was to highlight the many worlds of Goa, as we like to think of it. Like, Goa is not one, but it has these many worlds. And so we thought, how do we how do we illustrate this? How do we maybe provide a visual as well as a cultural metaphor for it? And as you know, in Goa, the azulejo styles are
Yes,
very
yes, yes.
ubiquitous, isn't it? And they're so
Absolutely.
beautiful, and they define Goa in ways that
Tyson, do you know what are azulejos?
Yeah, you can just elaborate a little more.
No, so these are these tiles, right? So these are the tiles
Yes.
that you see on the walls. You see all over Goa, and you can find these in Portugal as well. But you can also
Mhm.
find this all over India because of the Islamic polities in
Okay.
Central Asia, where they came from, in Iran, in everywhere. So that was one. So it kind of connected all these areas to us. But also, even after, say, the tiles are broken, you can
Mhm.
still assemble those broken pieces, and they still form a beautiful image, right? And you
Oh,
can see that
Yes.
happen in
Yeah.
many places. And if you go to Old Goa, or In other places also, you can see like a collection of different broken tiles. They're not thrown out, but somebody just put them together and then makes it beautiful, right?
Correct.
So we thought that this was a good metaphor to start thinking about Goa as a place of different cultural influences over centuries, right? And so we thought that, okay, and interestingly, the Portuguese word azulejos comes from the Arabic word Al-Zulaij, which simply means a painted tile.
Mhm.
Oh,
So we decided to go with the Arabic name uh, to suggest that there is a connection, a genealogy from the Arabic to the Portuguese, and that we hoped would help us um, explain in a better way, in a much more interesting and complex way, the many different cultural and historical influences of Goa. So the Al-Zulaij Collective was formed to precisely speak about the complexity of Goa. Like it's not a simple place. No, it's not just a tourist place there. People can come and just enjoy for a few days and go, and that's it. Like or people are or just people are laid back over here, and we have real problems. We have a very complicated history. We have a rich culture, and we as scholars and activists of and from Goa need to start working in articulating these complexities, these problems, this richness of culture.
there is a lot of a lot of topic covered, especially on Inquisition. So maybe if you could elaborate what was this whole series, how, especially on this Al-Zulaiji channel.
Right. So I think I've explained like what the nature of our work is in the Al-Zulaij collective, and it's quite broad, isn't it? Like so, there
Mhm.
is a broad conception of what Goa is and what culture is for Goa, and so on. So in that broad umbrella,
Mhm.
each one of us does our work, right? And it was, as I said, it was felt for a long time that there had to be some reliable information on
Okay.
this topic. So, what could be done? We as scholars uh, in the collective are better placed, or are placed in the right way to do it. Right? We have the language skills. We are trained in a certain way, and so we thought that we must do some. We must attempt to do something about it. And so the question was what to do and how to do it, right? Because
Okay.
as I said, a lot of the material is written in Portuguese, right? Which is not easily accessible to the Goan public, right? And even if it even the English debates that happen in English in a scholarly setting are not necessarily accessible to the public, because these are debates that are happening between specialists or between colleagues, right? And it has a value for that. So what to be done? What was to be done if those debates, those reliable facts, right? The reliable scholarship was to be brought into the public domain here. And so we
Mhm.
decided that a web series uh, was uh, was the best option, because the audio visual medium would be much more accessible to the public. And so what we really wanted to do with this web series is do a educational project.
Mhm.
So you see that there are 8 parts to it,
Okay.
right? And so we have like a arc there
Correct. Correct.
where the first episode deals with the foundation, and so on, right? And we talk about different problems that crop up when one has to study the Goa Inquisition, right? So it has 8 parts, right? And then normally a semester, if you're doing
Mm.
a course in history, has about 14 weeks. So 14 weeks
Mhm.
of classes. So this has 8 parts. So it's almost like, so if you watch the series, it's almost like having like one semester worth of material, right?
Wow.
So that way, our project is completely an educational project. We wanted to bring in scholars, bring them into the public domain, ask them to talk about their own work, but also ask them to talk about the problems in doing research, right? So the other aim of the series was to explain how difficult it is to do historical research, and especially difficult to do research on the Goa Inquisition because most of the sources are not available. So there were about 13,000 case trials are not available to us because once it was abolished, one of the viceroys destroyed it. So the main source of studying Inquisition, so whether it's the Spanish Inquisition or the Roman Inquisition, you have case trials, but we don't have case trials for the Goa Inquisition. So this
Okay.
was something that we wanted to let the public know that there are these difficulties. Before we get to know about the Goa Inquisition, there are these problems with studying the Goa Inquisition, right? So that's those are the two aims why we decided to do the web series. One was to educate the public, so have these scholarly information out in the public domain, and to explain what is how historical research is conducted. So as I said earlier, there were 8 parts. There are 8 parts to it. First part deals with the figure trying to get the basics right.
Oh,
Like
okay.
for instance, what is an auto da fe? An auto da fe is not necessarily burning at the stake, right? It's not. It could be even a
Exactly.
penance or a fine, right? So that is something that we try to clear up, and we also talk about a very important source called the Repertorio, which is a catalog of trials from about 1560 to about 1623, if I'm not mistaken. So why that source is so important for historians today is what we do in episode 1. In the second episode, we talk about conversion, like the history of conversion in the Goan context, right? And there are many. It has a rich uh, offering of causes and problems and sources and things like that. So I wouldn't talk much about it, but urge anybody who's interested to look at it. The third and the fourth episode are related much more about the foundation of the Inquisition and the abolishing. And especially in the case of the foundation, it was linked to the history of a people known as the New Christians, right? Who were generally by and large, the Jewish converts from Iberia to Catholicism. So how it's linked to this thing, to these people called the New Christians, and also the history of Jewish diaspora in India is something that we talk about uh, in relation to the foundation and the abolition of the Inquisition. In episode 5, we talk about the Inquisition as spread over the Indian Ocean, like spread all over from Africa to Macau. And in this episode, we zero in on Macau, and what it means that the Inquisition had its its basis in these areas, right? And whether we can think of it as powerful or not, even though there are these bases all across the ocean, right? And back in the day, it took like months and months to sail from one place to another, right? Um, Episode 6 is about religious orders and what their connection is to the Inquisition. So we talk about the Jesuits. Also talk about the Goan Oratorians, the order that was founded by Saint Jose Vaz, and
Yes, yes, yes.
right. And so what is that connection, if at all there is one? So we talk about that. Episode 7 is about slavery, right? The slaves who were tried by the Inquisition. Because what happens is, how many times have you heard about anybody talk about slavery when they talk about the Goan Inquisition, right? Which is a
Correct.
very important topic, right?
Correct.
And you can learn a lot by that, and a lot of Brazilian scholars are engaged in like doing work on slavery, and so we talk about the slaves, the agency of the slaves, what it was, why the Inquisition came down on the slaves, and what are the problems again in trying to figure out the history of of slaves under the trial under trial in the Inquisition. The last one, we circle back to this issue of the new Christians and crypto Jews, and 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 the Jewish population by reference to the surviving trial of Catarina de Orta. So Catarina de Orta was the sister of Garcia de Orta, the great doctor, botanist, or whatever you might call him.
Okay, that garden which we have in Panjim,
Yeah,
correct?
it's named in his honor. So the Jardín Garcia
Yes,
da
yes, that's
Horta
the name.
is named in his honor, and he lived
Okay.
in Goa. And one of the first books that were printed in Goa was his, the very famous book on the plants and medicines of India. And he wrote that book from Goa. So his sister was tried, and in this case she was burnt at the stake. But it took like
Oh,
many years from her first trial was in Lisbon, and then subsequent trials were in Goa. So two historians walk us through how to read the document, because an inquisitorial document is again a legal document of that time. It's a very technical document, right? So we wanted to show people that how historians do their work essentially, and how hard it is to read the documents, as you will see if you watch episode 8, because the handwriting is very bad, and there's a reason why the document has such a dense handwriting, right? Um, so these are the 8 episodes. I hope I have whetted the appetite of your viewers, or those who are interested to quickly
yes.
check it out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
and another thing that comes to me quite often, and I think so it's a valid question. See, when it comes to Inquisition, last time when I had a session with Matthew, I asked him what is Inquisition, and he said it's an inquiry, and it made sense to me, But
Mm,
every time when the word Inquisition comes, it the image that has been put up so far, it's like either burning or killing or the guillotine,
mm, mm.
So by we speaking about this, some there can be, I feel, some false notion that either from the Hindu side or any side, like they may be thinking, oh, these guys maybe are trying to defend, so
Mm.
is there a kind of what I would say, are we denying that there was something bad that actually happened?
No, I mean, definitely not in our case, right? So that's the reason why we did this series as an educational project, right? So we wanted to have the most expert view, the most scholarly view on the topic, right? So that the public will have access uh, to the most cutting edge research, if I may, right? And so
Correct.
until today, what research has been done on the Inquisition, the why and the how, and what are the problems, are are uh, are, are included in the series,
Mm.
right? So what I want to stress is that every aspect is covered, as much as the scholarship would allow us, and we have made an attempt to say what has not been done but can be done or should be done. So
Oh,
we have signposted things that can be known in the future, right? Or what future research will allow us to know.
okay, 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 okay.
So it's an ongoing thing. It's not. This is not. So even if you view all the episodes, uh, there is more that needs to be done. And what the message that we wanted to send is that scholars are working as we speak.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
And for the viewers, if you are going to search for Al-Zulaiji, don't worry, we shall put that into the description.
Yeah, we'll put the description down there. Mr. Dale, when I did my interview with Tyson, I said that using history of whichever community it may be, and misusing it to spur hatred. For example, if you look at the Catholic Church has a dark history. If you look at Hinduism, Hinduism has a dark history. If you look at Islam, it has a dark history. You look at any religion or any religious community, it has a dark history. Somewhere down the line, all of us, be belonging to any religion or any religious community, have used violence, have used force, have used means which actually the religion doesn't teach about. So, do you feel? I watched one of your interviews on the Al-Zulaiji web page itself, where you said that history is being misused, history is being misinterpreted for own political gains. And in the beginning of this program itself, of this interview itself, you mentioned that. So, what would be your views? What would be your advice for our viewers? How to be careful with such trends?
Yeah. No, I think the way the public debate or discourse in the, say, on the internet or wherever is is available today on the Inquisition is a good learning experience. Like it's a way to understand how misinformation works, and what could be its consequences. I think what I want to stress is uh, is how history is explained, right? And I think the part of the problem lies in explanatory models of history, right? So as I
Correct.
said,
Yes. Yes.
what is important to understand is change over time, right? And so an older model, like let's say from the 1950s onwards, thought that change had happened only because of religious or cultural reasons, right? With cultural was essentially a euphemism for again coming back to religion, right? So whether the coming of, say, the Europeans or Islam, there was this understanding that the most fundamental change that had taken place was in the religious life of the people
Mhm.
of the subcontinent, right? And so there was this tendency to say that only religious conflicts were most important,
Correct.
right? So this essentially was a model. Of course, there were other works that were
Correct.
happening, and but a certain current or certain section of historians basically made this argument. So this was one model, but of course, over the years, in the later research has time and time again demonstrated that there was not just a religious conflict. There were religious conflict. There's not denying that. Um, but there were other conflicts as well. Let's say there were conflicts over caste, there were conflicts over territories, but that necessarily weren't religious in nature. So there was this model that only stressed religious conflict, right? And I'm just talking about conflict here, but nobody talked about collaboration or how different communities came together for
Yes.
different reasons, right?
Very
Uh,
true.
right.
For
So
example, I may
yeah.
say how Shivaji and the Portuguese worked together, the Maratha kingdom and the Portuguese worked
So
together
there
for
were
some
some
time.
alliances between later Marathas also, and so minor kings would align. There were alliances
Yes.
with, say, the Cochin Raja and the Portuguese. The Dutch had many alliances. So alliances were taking place all throughout, and then they would break the
As and when they
alliances
needed
also,
it.
right? So it's not
Yes.
just that they would come together, they'll sign a contract in 1 year, and then 2 years later you see they sign another contract. Now the understanding is obviously the previous contract was broken, right? The same party signing the same contract over and over again means that the terms are not agreed to, or one party violates the terms. So all this would happen, and uh, so you have this older model, right? Like of only stressing religious conflict, but new research, uh, what a recent research has done is to open up the field to say that there were many other kinds of conflicts, and there were collaborations, and there was many different kinds of strategies that people used in the past, right? And as I said, like the lived reality is much more complex than what we assume or what we believe, right? And this is something that
Correct.
historians have slowly and little by little highlighted and demonstrated and illustrated through their work. So you can pick up any recent scholarship, and you'll see that that there is an attempt to understand reality in its uh, in its own context, so to speak, right? You spoke about context.
Yeah. True.
So that is what has done, and so
Correct.
I
Correct.
yeah. So what is the past? What is our history? Essentially needs to take into consideration conflicts and collaborations, if I may simplify it over here as well.
Mhm.
That
Correct.
so everybody did, right? So what is important, and you asked me like what's the advice over here, is what is important to understand the lived reality of people in the past from the perspective of various groups, right? So that goes as much of elite groups as well as subaltern groups, which is why I'm
Yes.
interested in kings and laborers, right? So
Yes.
so
So
it
we
might
come to
seem
the
like
beginning
it's
of
too
the.
drastic, that escalates,
Yes.
too much. But
Mhm.
that's the way we are researching history now, right? And also I think the other thing that I want to stress, as if I may, as an advice, is not to depend on old books. Yeah,
Mhm.
the older the book, the yellower it is, or the more dog ears it has, doesn't make it any true or false, right? So
Correct.
what is important is to always be aware of the new stuff that has written. And it doesn't mean that the new stuff is automatically correct, but I think you see what is the change in the explanatory model.
Exactly. Like, upgrading the research and all.
Upgrade, basically, right? Like your mobile
Yes.
apps need upgrade every 2 days, no? So
Exactly.
it's something like history
Correct.
needs like the
Yes.
explanatory model, not the history, right? The explanatory model of how we understand what happened in history needs
Correct.
an upgrade, because every
Yeah,
now
maybe
and
because
then, yeah, no, every
yeah,
now
maybe
and then,
because we did not have certain sources and certain documentations, and therefore one book
precisely.
was written. But now we have more resources, we have more
More
sources,
sources, right?
documentations, and
And
so on.
yeah, and the most fundamental thing that new researchers have to do, or younger researchers have to do, is precisely find more material, right? I mean, you
More
don't have to
material.
like
Correct.
dig harder, because uh, just in the case of Goa, there is so much material that has not been studied at all. So you don't have to like
Yes.
break your head to find new material. But what happens as a consequence of new research is new material comes to light, whether from the archives, from the libraries, or through interviews, or private papers, or people's, or many scholars study monuments, or the build culture,
Mhm.
or urban, whatever it is. So new research brings new sources to light, and if you have more sources, then something needs to change, right? Some way we need to try to figure out how to understand this new information in the light of what we know already, right? So historical research is not static,
Very
right?
true.
Yeah, and
Very
if it
true.
is static, that it does mean that if no new book has been written for like 40-50 years, it does mean that
Yeah.
it's
And it's
time
like
to.
maybe it will be like we are giving a definite stand to a particular claim or to a particular, like, ideology or like that. So
Yeah, that is a
we
real
need to.
danger. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
We have got quite a lot from Dale in this short time. I mean, even when we had this brief talk with him, like, last time I was going on
Yes.
writing about the things, like, and I was, half the time I was lost, like, because I
I mean,
was
like,
even telling my friends in UK, I just got across this guy Dale, and
yeah.
he is like, whoa, like, and I was very much interested in the fact that you need to know a lot of languages, and
Mm.
actually, yes, it
Yes.
cuts the barrier, like. And while we were in Rushall Seminary, it was always very intriguing to know that the seminary had books, Portuguese books, like, but it wasn't
And were
read
not
and all.
being accessed.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't accessed. And then after you told us, like, they have been digitalized and it's there, like, online. And but for that we have to know the language, like, and it's not only come esta, like, you have to make every day some small little progress, like, in
Yeah.
learning.
Yes.
No,
And
languages are very important, and you cannot do historical research without knowing language, especially for Goa. Like, again, coming back to this whole idea of the many worlds, at least three languages. You need to know at least three languages, right? So Konkani, Marathi,
Yes.
and Portuguese to do research. And then today we communicate in English, right? English is the
Yes.
lingua franca for us. So as a scholar of Goa, you need to know like four languages minimum, right? So
Yes.
that's basic. Uh, and uh, and then then it kind of snowballs a little bit from there. Unfortunately, I envy those people who can only read like English sources and write their dissertations and books,
Correct.
but yeah, I mean, can't do anything about that, because history is such, right? I think it does. I think why we need so many languages to know Goa's history before the 1900s, and perhaps only English is enough after 1900s, is
Yes.
precisely the kind of evolution of language as well. Like before the 19th century, uh, there was no such thing as a monolingual culture, right? Many languages were there and many languages were used. But it's only in the 19th century that slowly things start to people start saying, oh, this is my language, this is my identity, right? So there is
That's
definitely
right.
this historical evolution there. There's a historical reason um, why today we might not know so many languages or might not have to deal with so many languages, but in the past, the multilingualism was kind of the norm. So that might also be another reason why, as a scholar of Goa, you might need to know, you have to know rather about four languages.
yeah, so Matthew, we know English, we know Konkani, we know
Company.
Hindi, and in the
Hindi.
seminary we were taught Latin, and then just to add on
Latin.
Greek after
Hey, I know
Ra-
Greek. I know Greek, by the way. I can read Greek.
Yeah, so
You
I
know?
mean, it can also, once you get into the habit, it's not necessarily very
Yeah.
easy, very difficult. So the initial one, initially it's very hard, and it's hard for everybody.
Yes.
Uh, but it can be, I think it can be done. Yeah.
Done.
that's
Tyson, I
perfect.
would like to make a comment here.
Mhm.
We have seen Mr. Dale talking so much about, what it takes actually to, construct history, what it takes to do a historical research. And we have some people on YouTube and, writing articles and all, who just come from out of nowhere
Mm.
and try to, they do cherry picking. They just pick up one
Correct,
cherry
correct,
from the
correct,
cake
correct.
and that cherry tastes bitter and they say the cake is bitter. I'm like, this type of logic, we educated people need to be really careful. And in Goa
Mhm.
right now, we badly need it because hatred in the name of religion, using historical facts, which is currently going on. We know what is happening in the Gyanvapi
Mhm.
Masjid and what is happening with Taj Mahal.
Mhm.
It's so easy for them to just get one structure and calling it
Mhm.
a deity or so and then say, before Masjid there was a temple. I'm saying, if you are, why are you digging only up till the temple? Just dig more. You may find something more from the
Yeah,
Neolithic age or something like that. You may even find something at a time where people worship trees and plants, what we say animism. So, we need to be careful, viewers. We need to be careful, being a historian, doing historical research is not so easy. I know for my paper I took around a year. One thing, as sir said, and Mr. Dale said, interest goes on increasing. And I had started, thinking of writing one page or two page reply to Chef Ali Vaidya, and then something or the other, connection from one place to another was going on, and it developed my interest. But after listening to Mr. Dale and after watching only few episodes on Al-Zulaij, I'm feeling like, My research itself, my paper itself is very, very small, very, very, very little, and so much has to be dug in. And I wonder how these people just come out of nowhere, and educated people listen to them. So
Yeah,
that's very sad. That's
especially basing themselves maybe on just one or two books, like, and that's the
correct.
and they
Just
give
citing only few
yeah,
events
yeah,
and so
yeah.
on, and misinterpreting it to,
Yeah.
for
Correct,
their
So
own.
correct.
so yeah, I think I think there are two types of people over here. At least from what I see, is one who would find something in history and then politicize it. And then there are
Yes.
other people who will say, who will find the same thing and say, oh, but my interest have increased now. My interest have increased to other areas, other related areas. So I start from the Inquisition. I've somehow I got interested in the Inquisition, but now I'm interested in, say, trade or colonialism or something else. Like so. So I think to know that you are doing it right, you need to have that interest, to have that openness of mind, open to like curiosity rather, to see like, oh, what's this, what's that, how is this thing linked to
Curiosity.
that? Yeah. So I think it needs that, you need curiosity uh, to understand history, to engage with history. So that's also very important.
Yes.
I think so. There's certain things like I would like to tell the viewers just to sum up maybe that first of all, get yourself know to know some languages at least, like how Mr. Dale sir said, minimum 4 languages, maybe not 8 to 9 to 10, but just some few languages. Read a lot, not just 2 books, but maybe like if you would like to be an expert in that, at least maybe 25 books. That's maybe the minimum. Then know how to use the interfield relation, like maybe psychology can help, economics can help, and you will get a wider knowledge. And also there's a very nice point that Mr. Dales made, like understand the lived reality, okay, in terms of the context, which was, yeah, because we cannot use the past as of now, like in this today's context. Then again, not to depend on all the old books for explanatory model. That is, yeah, that does make a huge sense. And try, if you're a good researcher, if you're a good historian, you will find new sources, like and not stick just to one or two. So am I right?
Yeah, I
Very,
think I think
very
that's
true. Very
that's a
true.
great summary for what we've spoken about, and it does give you the gist, but also the core of what we've spoken about. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Okay,
Thank you
and
so much. Yeah.
thank you so much, Dale, for making time to be with us. And it was indeed an honor. And we were very delighted to have your presence amidst us and for taking out your time and making up this Zoom meeting. Well, if everyone is wondering why the Zoom meeting, yes, the weather conditions in Goa is pretty bad. So we have
Yeah,
to stick
yeah. No, thanks again.
indoors,
Thanks
like,
again.
and yes.
Thanks again for
So
this
thank
opportunity. I really enjoyed being here. It's great always for me to talk about history because I really love it, and I don't like to miss any opportunity to talk not just about my work, but also the broader field of history. How we historians work,
fine.
why it is important. To understand history, why is the importance of history. So for all that, thank you so much, and I wish you success with your channel, and so good luck and thank you again.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
like how I said to my viewers, the rainy season is yet to come, but it has already started. And so it's getting me signed off again and again because of the network. So thanks to all the viewers for staying right up till here and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Have a good time and do subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you.